3. Evam Budhe Param Budva Samstabhya Atmanam Jahi Satrum Mahavaho Kamarupam Durasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence.
And thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directed to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire, predominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yoga postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or the discharge of one's prescribed duty in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so it says here, one may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. Okay, well, this is very good information. How by gradually developing, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by material senses and the mind. Okay, so the problem is the desire for overlording and then the desire for sense gratification. These 2 points are the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. So, how can we overcome this? Well, we can overcome this by regularly hearing the Bhagavad Gita spoken by genuine devotees, asking questions, and hearing the answers, chanting our rounds regularly, and following the 4 regulative principles that we promised to do at the time of initiation. So, This verse says today, this is chapter 3, text number 43. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence or Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So when it says one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, and then by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Yeah, lust is never satisfied. If you pour water on a fire and gasoline with one arm, and then pour gasoline with the other arm, and the fire is never going to go out. The fire will only go out if you keep pouring water on it and not put any gasoline on it. So in the same way, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence or Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Okay, so that means it is possible to control lust, anger, and greed. But we have to get training by a bona fide spiritual master or spiritual masters. That means that it is a gradual progression to get to the point where one can control the mind and the senses and keep them engaged in Krishna consciousness. That's why this verse says, verse 43 of the 3rd chapter, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses. Okay, that's the first point. We are not on the same level as the material senses. I mean, in ignorance we are, but when we develop Krishna conscious knowledge, we understand that the soul is superior to the material senses. So, or it's transcendental to the material senses, also to the mind, and also to the intelligence. It's knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, not mind, and intelligence. So, how do we do that? Well, we engage in Krishna conscious activities. Those activities should be under the direction of bona fide gurus or gurus. We should not say, well, I don't need a guru, I can do it all on my own. That would be a big mistake. And then in the under the let's say direction of bona fide guru or gurus, one can steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. What is deliberate spiritual intelligence? That is always being engaged in Krishna conscious activities. Chanting, dancing, feasting, hearing classes, giving classes, and going on Sankirtan, etc. So this deliberate spiritual intelligence means you understand the absolute importance of being engaged in Krishna conscious activities every day. Then gradually our spiritual strength becomes stronger. And gradually we can conquer the insatiable, meaning never satisfied enemy known as lust. Okay, so in the purport, it says, this third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by for lust and desire, for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. All right, well, what is this pure identity? That means I am. Now, when the pure identity, the pure I am, is that I am the eternal servant of Krishna. The impure I am is I am this body, and my life is all about having sense gratification. So when we become convinced that I am the eternal servant of Krishna, that's who I really am, then we engage all the time in Krishna's service. And we transcend all the lower types of false identification. I am a CEO, I am a movie star, I am this, I am that. But if we identify ourselves as the humble servant of Krishna, that's the real I am. That's the real identification of oneself. So, one may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Well, what is that training? The training is engaging in loving devotional service, going out on Sankirtan, preaching, eating only prasadam, hearing lectures regularly, giving lectures, and so forth. So all of this under the direction of bona fide spiritual master or man. Stint, meditating silently or twisting their body different ways,
are exercising their body and uh, just basically wasting their time. Okay, maybe they feel a little more energetic physically. They might have a little bit more mental, let's say, uh, mental peace, right? But it doesn't solve the problem of birth, death, old age, and disease. So it's basically a it's basically the chaff. It's called the chaff of the rice. Chaff is it? In other words, when you beat the rice, uh, and then what's left is the covering on the rice. So if you try to eat the covering of the rice, you don't really have the rice, right? It's just the covering. So in the same way, simply doing this type of fake yoga to make some spiritual, let's say, advancement. Uh, it's a fake thing. It doesn't actually make help you become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Okay, so now what is the problem? It is the desire for overlording and for sense gratification. This is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. The desire for overlording. You want to be the boss. You want to tell everybody else what to do, even though you don't even know yourself what to do. so, so overlording means you want to be a person that tells other people what to do and wants to be a controller and an enjoyer. The real controller is Krishna, and the real enjoyer is Krishna. So we are, if you're surrendered to Krishna, then you offer your love and devotion to the Lord because He is the real enjoyer and He is real proprietor of everything. And He is in other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are all part and parcel of the Lord. Therefore, we should work for pleasing to the Lord by devotional service. So, and it says in this third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. Well, this personal voidness is what the false yogis are looking for. But you have to give up even thinking about the impersonal voidness. However, we should be always directed toward Krishna consciousness by understanding that we are the eternal servitor of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so in this material world, there's what you call, in material existence, there is lust and desire for domination. One is overwhelmed by sex desire, that's called lust, and also one wants to dominate the resources of material nature. In other words, to have cars, houses, and yachts, and all kinds of possessions, to be a great proprietor. Okay, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem of life. In fact, it takes you away from solving the problem of life. So here it says,
Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material sense, the mind, and the intelligence. Okay, so that's the good news. By strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the mind, the senses, and the intelligence. So we have to be engaged all the time in Krishna consciousness. We have to give up the desire for overlording, meaning the owner and the enjoyer of everything. Krishna is the real proprietor. Krishna is the real enjoyer. So if we cooperate with Krishna, then we can overcome this illusory desire to be the owner and the enjoyer. We accept our position. We are always going to be subordinate to the Lord. As soon as one becomes puffed up and thinks, oh, well, I can emulate Krishna, I can be as great or greater than Krishna, then there's a big problem. And one will be a complete failure. They might think for some period of time that they have more money than other people, or power, or fame, or proprietorship, etc. But all those things are temporary. They're going to go away. And then what are you going to be left with? Only bad karma. So best thing is always remember Krishna, never forget use Krishna. Learn how to use everything in Krishna's service or devotional service, and be satisfied with whatever it comes easily by the mercy of the Lord. So now, for sure, we know what the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul is. It's the desire for overlording and for sense gratification. This is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. If we could teach this to our teenagers, it would be a great accomplishment. Yeah, because they're trying to be the owner and overlording for sense gratification, and dominating the resources of material nature. So that's what they learn in school. They want to dominate over the resources of material nature, and they want to overlord for sense gratification. However, it is possible that anyone in any condition of life, whether they're a child or teenager or an adult or middle-aged or old-age person, in any condition of life, one can become a devotee. In fact, surrender to Krishna is not controlled by karma. In other words, at any time, even if you're the worst person in the world, if you desire to surrender to Krishna, you can do it. And Krishna will help you. So surrendering to Krishna is not controlled by karma. That's good news. That means even the worst person can become the best person if they surrender to Krishna. Okay, are there any questions about this verse? Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence. O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, also known as Krishna consciousness,
and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Insatiable means it's never satisfied. So, if it's never satisfied, then you'll never be happy. You'll always be trying to, uh, you know, please your senses for sense gratification. And that keeps you always in a position where you're not interested in Krishna. You're interested just in the futile endeavor of becoming a owner and enjoyer. We want to be the servant and the servant and the surrendered completely to the Lord. We don't want to be the enjoyer. We don't want to be the owner. We want to be the one who gives pleasure to the Lord and who is does not see themselves as the owner. They're the servant of the Lord. So this is completely opposite of what people think, what they learn in schools. It's the complete opposite. But if a person takes up this practice of Krishna consciousness, first of all, most of your problems go away. Secondly, you begin to develop the power to control your mind and senses. And then because of that, you also develop peace of mind. And you're not always agitated by the senses. And you'll give up sex enjoyment. You can have babies, that's all right, but you have to take care of them. And you should not be like Elon Musk, he's got like 9 wives and killed children with 9 different wives. I mean, it's completely crazy and nonsense. One wife, just like Krishna, when he came, of course, Krishna can have as many wives as he wants, because he's a Supreme Personality. But he taught the principle of Eka Patni Vrat. A high-class person should only have one wife, and a high-class woman should only have one husband. It's called Eka Patni Vrat. Vrat means the determined, let's say, determination to have only one wife and one God and one guru and so forth, everything one. Okay, are there any questions? Any questions from outside?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Any questions online? Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So this proprietorship of
1 second, Mataji. I think maybe your audio is not coming through on our end.
It's not coming.
Okay, now go ahead, Mataji.
Okay, my question is like, how do you not claim any proprietorship when you do everyday activities and like this is my dress, this is my car, this is my like cooking also, everything is like my. So many things are we have this kind of thought always, every day leading our life, we have this all thing. So do you consciously take consciously take an effort to always say that no, this is not mine, this is Krishna's? You remind like that yourself?
when you use everything that you think is yours in the service of Krishna, then you lose the concept that it's yours because you're practically engaging in everything in the service of Krishna. That's the secret. Whatever you have, it should be engaged in the service of Krishna. Your car, your house, your I don't know, anything that you have, you should engage it all in Krishna, or in the service of Krishna. Then you overcome this I, me, and mine syndrome. The idea that I am the proprietor, I am the enjoyer, that's material consciousness. But when you understand Krishna is the proprietor and Krishna is the enjoyer, and who am I? I'm the eternal servant of Krishna. Now you have your real identity as the eternal servant of Krishna.
But it does take time, a lot of time.
Well, that depends. That depends how much you're attached to material things. But if you can learn to use whatever you have in the service of Krishna, then quickly you make spiritual advancement.
The other day, Krishnamurali Prabhu was mentioning about every time he praises Maharaj, he'll right away say, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And then he ended with a praise to Maharaj, and then Maharaj was timely saying, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Well, yeah, we should. The whole glories to Prabhupada. Because without him, we wouldn't know anything.
Hmm.
So without him, we'd be completely lost. And Prabhupada is still with us. We're reading his purports. We are doing everything, hopefully, according to his instructions. So Prabhupada is with us. He's not gone. And Prabhupada said, I will not die. I will live eternally through my books. Yeah, his books. And that's what we're doing. We're reading, of course, we're reading Bhagavad Gita, but with Prabhupada's purports. So Prabhupada has not gone. He's instructing us. Every time we read his purport, Prabhupada is instructing us. So he's with us still. We
Yes,
should
Maharaj.
have that. Go ahead. Yes.
Can I share one experience just this couple of days before it happened in temple? So on 31st December night, so like when I came to temple and I was taking darshan Prabhupada, and then I like a kirtan was going on, I was singing, dancing, your kirtan was going on. Then I was singing, dancing, and then I looked at Prabhupada, and he has this flower, white purple flower. He was in his hand, he was holding, and then all of a sudden a thought came that, what is the likelihood that this flower will, at the end, when the Sayan Seva will, like the Sayan Seva will happen, that flower will come to my hand. I just thought, and I thought that way. And then there's so many, because mind is so speed, like a lot of speed of mind. So I had so many different thoughts, like, will Prabhupada please bless me that every day I will read Bhagavad Gita? Will Prabhupada please bless me so that my family will be Krishna conscious always? Like so many thoughts came at once. And then towards the end, like Kirtan was over, and Damodar Hari Prabhu, Deepak Prabhu from Redmond, he was getting all the flowers from deities and all. So he was giving everyone flower, and I was sitting down with Ritika Mataji, and then we both started asking him, Prabhuji, give us flower, but he couldn't listen. Then by the time he returned back, his plate was all over, no flowers were left behind. Then when he heard that we were asking him, and then he said, oh, you should have thrown something to get my attention. And then he met up like found like that, and then he went, and then by then Prabhupada's Sayan Seva had already started. So he got that flower, and that big flower, and he gave it to me. And then, I cannot express how I felt. Prabhupada is there in our temple and he's listening to us. I felt that way. I cannot express how I felt actually. It was so intense and so personal and so emotional for me. He's there actually.
Thank you for telling us that. It was
Yeah.
very nice. Very, very nice.
I cannot
Yeah.
imagine Maharaj, like so many people were there. So many, that 31st December night, so many people were there. What is the likelihood that that thought came in my mind? And another thing also, that thought came. Prabhupada, do you really acknowledge that we are singing here, doing kirtan, dancing? Like that thought also came. Like speed of mind is so fast. Like so many thought came that particular moment, and with that flower in my mind. And at the end, the flower, I'm like, I can even show you the picture that day what Prabhupada was holding, and the flower then came to my hand. I was like really amazed and felt very blissful. And I felt like, oh, we are not I'm so hopeful, not hopeless anymore. Like that kind of it felt. And we cannot thank you, Maharaj, for like giving us Prabhupada here, giving us temple here. I can go on saying we're eternally grateful to you, Maharaj. Eternally grateful to you.
Well, we have to continue maintaining the temple.
Yes, Maharaj, yes. With your blessing, it will always happen.
Should be there for the next, I don't know, 1,000 years. Or
10,000.
10,000 years.
Yes. The golden period of.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I guess we're at the end of the class. Unless
Any
anybody
other questions? Okay. So
Well, thank you for sharing your experience with Srila Prabhupada. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Bol.
Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram.
I remember when the first time as a new devotee, we had to fast on Janmashtami. And we were fasting. You have to fast till like 12 o'clock right at night. And and then I was just staring at Prabhupada's, murti and chanting like all day long. Right? And as it came closer to, midnight, at one point, I started hallucinating, thinking Prabhupada was talking to me, or I saw him move his eyes or something, and I was, I got shocked, that's because now the reason that happened was that one of the brahmacharis left a plastic like basket, not a big basket, but a small basket on the stove, and it's one of these really cheap types of baskets, you buy in the thrift shops, okay? And the smoke was coming into the temple room, and it was poisonous. But by inhaling it, I started having hallucinations.
Oh.
Very
dangerous.
Huh?
Very dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous, because it was slowly getting melted down, and then smoke was coming to the temple. Of course, it was a small temple room, and we're inhaling it, and then suddenly I realized, I thought I was hallucinating, right? But then I realized, no, it's being poisoned by this, the smoke coming into the temple from the kitchen.
So
you got to be careful,
So the thing is to make sure that we were not Hallucinating.
These cheap plastic things, made in Japan, made in Hong Kong or something. Sometimes they have toxic things in them, and they're not meant to be, set on fire. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, and then I realized it was because I was inhaling the smoke coming into the temple room, and then right away I went and I put out the it was some kind of a cup type of thing, plastic cup.
Haribo.
Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Okay, so our takeaway: desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Okay, that should be our takeaway. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.